I'm joined by Simon Thomas and Matthew Southcombe here in the depths of Wales Online Towers to basically dive into Wales's title hopes falling apart today.
Yeah,
it's pretty much all over, isn't it?
I'm a bit gravelly voiced, Ben. It's not because I've been shouting at the screens or whatever. A little bit of lurgy. But I tell you what, it's a long time since I have watched such an incident-packed game of rugby. Where do you begin?
I'm not really sure. It was breathless, wasn't it?
It was breathless. You look back at it and probably the big moments went France's way.
Yeah.
You know, you look at the scrums at the end of the first half. That was a huge moment as it goes into something like the 45th, 46th minute before half-time. You know, that France keeping Wales out there. You know, I tweeted it was the Sean Edwards effect, because how many times have we seen Wales do that in the last 12 years? You know, it's a huge moment in the game. And then later on in the second half, the scrums, you get the yellow card, and then the very next scrum, it goes against Wales. Massive moment in the game. Yeah. The big moments went France's way, and ultimately that's where the game was won and lost.
There were four for me, four real game-defining moments. Matt's mentioned a couple there. Those scrums, twice at the end of the first half, Wales went for scrums against 14 men. Aldred had been sin-binned. You know, France had been pushing it to the limit of the breakdown, contesting so hard. One penalty to any. He's off 14 men, two scrums. Fico's on the back row. He's at number 8 at one point. It was bizarre. Wales had the opportunity. They hammered away at the French line through the kitchen sink and every other domestic appliance you can think of at them. There was one key moment for me, I think, when we chose to go the wrong way. If it had gone left, there did seem to be numbers there. But, you know, the French blue line, you know, the thin blue line was a thick blue line. And as you say, it was like watching the Sean Edwards team, just in blue rather than red. And then quickly, the other key moments for me, it was the interception, clearly. Wales had come back into the game. Dylan Lewis had scored 1 point in it. Wales had momentum. For once, they had quick ball. They had a couple of men over. I think Tipuric was there and Josh Adams. You thought, this is on now. But Tompkins goes to shape the ball. There's only one thing that Romain Ntomaku was fantastic. Only one thing he had in his mind. He wasn't drifting. He had eyes on the ball, read it, picked it, under the post. It was a classic 14-pointer. And then the other two really was the one where Ken Owens tries to feed Josh Adams in space down the left, knowing Adams is a predatory nature. He wasn't marked. There was men coming across. You'd have banked on him to score there. Willem S, the try scorer for France, slaps the ball down out of Ken's hand. Could it have been a penalty? If it was a penalty, you could argue a penalty try. It was the touch judge Carl Dixon called it initially. His on-field decision just to knock on. They went to the TMO, they looked at it. Matt Carley looked at that and thought, nah, I'm not going to go against. There's not sufficient evidence to go against what Carl Dixon has said there. Just a knock on. Key moment, I think, Alan Wynne-Jones questioned whether she'd been a penalty to try win. Pivac mentioned his post-match. And then the very last one was, again, the scrum, going to have a carbon copy of Ireland, really, in some ways. Wales had 3 penalties in a row. It ended up with the French tight head being sin-bin. Could it have been a penalty try after the third drive? Again, argument. But anyway, they went for the scrum again off the penalty against 14 men. You think, this is it. This is the way to get back in the game. On comes Demba Bamba. Now, you're going to argue from here to the hills whether what he did was illegal, but what he did won a penalty. Wales, I think, thinks he came across. Matt will talk more about that.
Yeah.
But 4 absolutely pivotal moments in the game.
Yeah, on that scrum, you know, Wales are going to be furious about this, because it's exactly what they were talking about earlier in the week. They've had a go at Tadhg Furlong for his angle, coming straight across and into the hooker. All they want, they say, is for 2 teams to push straight. They feel like on this instance, as soon as I saw it live, you know, the view's not the best of the Principality Stadium. It's on the far side. I was watching it on the big screen. I thought straight away he's gone straight across, a la Tadhg Furlong. If you believe the Welsh coaching staff, they're going to be fuming about this. Si's watched it back. He's a little bit more. You think he might have just done Rob Evans?
I tell you what he did. He dominated the scrum. And he got France going forward at the scrum, and the previous 3, well, they also were painting a picture, wasn't it? The picture he painted to Matt Carley is as a prop who's come on and has made a difference. He drives into Rob Evans. Now, it'd be fun. I would love to see that old aerial shot looking down, the spider cam looking down there, because then remember we did with Joe Marler in recent years, and you were looking at some of the angles he was taking. I'd be fascinated, but however he did it, he did Rob Evans, he did the Welsh scrum, he got the penalty, and it was an absolutely key moment. But scrums again, isn't it? It's not going to go away, this big debate. A straight scrum.
The irony with Demba Bamba is, talk about painting pictures. He struggled against England, and that sort of painted the picture that he was not a great scrummager. And he comes on, does that in his first scrum.
Yeah, exactly. And like Simon says, scrums tend to be a battle of what you can and can't get away with. Matt Carley was on the other side of the scrum, so I'd imagine that call has come from his touch judge, Carl Dixon, who was involved quite a bit.
Yeah.
Wales can't really. You can complain if you want to, but ultimately, just like the pivotal scrums in Ireland, it's gone against them.
You said, didn't you, that you got the impression that the next lineup, Rob Evans was stating his case?
Yeah, I had the ref mic on and I felt like I heard Rob Evans state his case to Matt Carley and Wayne Pivac, as you touched on. Exactly the same in the post-match press conference. They feel hard done by.
Obviously, if you are scrummaging legally, you want to emphasise that you are scrummaging legally, but surely now all this talk about the scrum, Wales have to sort of rethink how they go about this in public.
Yeah,
it just strikes you as they keep going to this well and they're not really getting much from it.
The interesting thing is there's been so much talk about the scrum going into the game, and for the first sort of 37 minutes it was quite non-eventful, really.
Yeah,
I mean, both sides were quite solid on their own ball. Then you did get those two scrums off the penalties at the end of the first half. Well, I thought Wales, certainly in one of them, had a slight nudge. The Welsh scrum was okay. I mean, the irony of all this is like it's become a big focus point, and then people are thinking, is this because they're worried about the scrummies of the week? The Welsh scrum has actually gone well. I mean, there's just been these two absolutely pivotal decisions that have gone against Wales on the opposition try line in Dublin and now in Cardiff. And those are the two ones that they are hurting them and they feel hurt about. But Jonathan Humphreys, old campaigner, knows it all. He said, at the end of the day, you've got to be able to deal with a legal scrum and with an illegal scrum, because an illegal scrum is not always going to be spotted.
Indeed. It felt a bit like Dublin at certain times today, in the sense that you felt that France had the better of the match for the most part, but Wales had sustained periods of pressure in the 22, which they just did not put away.
Yeah, France were probably deserved winners.
Yeah.
But I'm not overly. It's disappointing that Wales have lost the game, but the two line breaks stand out for me. One in the first half, one in the second half. Bad decisions were made. They went the wrong way. Held onto the ball a little too long. Chance was gone. I think Wales just lacked that cutting edge at times. Wayne Pivac referenced it in his post-match press conference as well. So the signs are relatively encouraging from Wales. If you look hard enough, it's not all doom and gloom. They did make a few line breaks, caused a bit of trouble. Just lacked that sort of cutting edge in the French 22.
There were two in particular, and both involving Nick Tompkins, if I recall. There was a little dink over the top by Dan Biggar, which I think Tompkins got the inside ball. I think Gareth Davis. Anyway, they were breached then, the French, and it's the kind of situation where a clinical side takes those. Didn't take, and of course the very last play of the game. It was somehow fitting that a match with so much incident should end on another pivotal moment. It was a crazy last attack, that final play. The ball seemed to fly in all kind of directions, went loose at one point. Wales regathered it, but then at the end of it, Tompkins cuts through in midfield. He makes the break, and you're thinking, this is it. He's brought down, but there were Welshmen pouring up on either side. If Wales could have got quick ball at that moment, you had to think a try was coming in. It would have been a match-winning try. But Berry's off to Camille Chat, because cometh the hour, cometh the French replacement hooker. If you were looking to teach a young player starting the game how to get your body in the right position over a slightly isolated player, it was perfect. He was hands on the ball, couldn't be budged. It was the right decision. But of course, what kicked off then was eventful. And I mean, what was that like? What was your take on that? Because who was particularly angry there? Was everybody angry?
Who do you think was angry?
Was he a fly half?
He was, yeah. So Dan Biggar was in the thick of it. As I said, the view at the Principality is not the best at times. He was on the far side. All I saw was Dan Biggar, his legs going above his head. He was upended somehow. I think Vakatawa was in the mix, and then all of a sudden they were all in there. There were subs running on. You've seen pictures of the incident now since of the French tight dead with his hand around Lee Halfpenny's throat and his right hand sort of cocked back as if he was about to do something he shouldn't be doing. It was a little bit of an ugly end to the game, but it sort of simmered at that point all the way through. Wales were frustrated throughout the afternoon. They wound France up at times as well. Josh Adams had got into Teddy Tomar and Vakatawa, so it was kind of on the edge all day.
Were you saying there was a suggestion of a punch, and Jake Ball was complaining about it at one point? Did you get the impression?
Yeah, there was that was thrown in there. Jake Ball feels like there was a punch in the build up to the first try from Boutier. So at times you needed three sets of officials out there. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot going on off the ball. But, you know, it was a full-blooded test match. You know, it was a real Six Nations contest. The crowd were fantastic. The atmosphere was unbelievable. And the players more than played their part.
Oh, it'd been great for a neutral. I mean, it was interesting. It was an interesting contrast to the game for me, because the first half, going into the game, you got two teams with so much attacking flair, and two teams you like to play rugby. But in the first half, it was the order of the boot that ran the day. Really, it was an aerial contest, you know, primarily. Yeah. And France came on top in that aerial contest, largely due to Ntamack, man of the match. I thought his kicking out of hand, both, you know, his touch finders off penalties, his up and unders, his low trajectory sweeping kicks, his cross kicks, he was absolutely outstanding with the boot. Of course, the first try led from one of his up and unders, and the hang time he gave Tudley Thomas the chance to really compete with Halfpenny in the air. Halfpenny, one of the best in the world, but when everybody can, you know, make a mistake under pressure, bounced off his arm. I think just his upper arm, it seemed to, right into Bautier's path. And their kicking game was excellent. It wasn't just Ntamack either. Dupont showed that he's got a real good box kicking game, and that fullback, he's got a siege gun in his boot, in his leg. He really has. He can put it in. So that was key in the first half.
Let's take a couple of questions. So let's go back to Dan Biggar. We got a question here from Steve. Do you think Biggar needs to change his behaviour? It was certainly a day when he seemed to lose his head a bit, didn't he?
Oh, we've had these debates with Dan Biggar before.
Not literally with Dan Biggar.
No, not with Dan Biggar himself, but, you know, this has come up in the past. Do I think... I think I've seen him a lot more animated than this. Don't get me wrong, he was frustrated, but, you know, Dan Biggar plays that way. You know, he needs to be on that limit. Does he overstep the mark occasionally? You know, we saw in the Italy game the referee had to tell Neil Jenkins to calm him down before a conversion was taken. And, you know, he gesticulated a lot towards the referee today. Didn't really come across much on the ref mic that he was actually in his ear, should I say, too much. So, you know, I've seen Dan Biggar a lot worse with officials than he was today. So it's not something I want to make an issue out of, to be honest.
He's a fighter, you see, Dan. It's one of his great strengths. Great rugby player, but he's a fighter as well. Yeah. And, you know, fighters are animated characters sometimes, aren't they? I thought he did a lot of good things today, and purely in a rugby sense as well. I think some of his offloading and his work, I think he's buying into the Pivac style. And let's be honest, you know, it's a serious business, international rugby. You know, Wales had come up just short. They probably, at that final whistle, and feel that they were hard done by in certain instances. You know, it's understandable that people get upset. But obviously, it's not just this. You've seen Dan get a bit animated in the past. Yeah. It's a thin book. You know, it's a line he's got to be careful he doesn't cross, basically.
I think trying to buy the free kick or the penalty from that quick mark might have been a little bit optimistic, that one.
He ate the first bite after try that sort of thing.
Let's go to another question here from Gareth. How can we go from a Grand Slam semi-final in a World Cup to losing to the French under-23s? I think it's important to point out that we very nearly lost to France twice last year under Warren Gatland. I think that's...
Look, there's going to be a lot of context. There's going to be a lot of knee-jerk reaction from people, you know, perhaps especially people who don't sort of follow the game as regularly as some fans do, and just look upon it and say, well, we're Grand Slam winners, we're World Cup semi-finalists. No, we lost 2 of our first 3. We've got to go to England. We could end up 4th or 5th in the table. This was always going to be a question of how long people were prepared to give a Pivac for his honeymoon period, you know. And there are going to be some people, I mean, I saw within 5 minutes at the end of the game, something popped up in my online social feed, Pivac out. I thought, dear me, you know. Listen, you know, it's a work in progress, this current team. Yeah. There's some good things, there are some not so good things, but you can't make a judgment on it after 3 games. I think there's one thing I would say about the style that he's trying to play, and what does slightly concern me is if you look at what the Pivac and Stephen Jones did at the Scarlets, what was fundamental to their game plan was quick ball, either when they go into contact themselves, or particularly from turnover ball. Now, they had people who were vital to that in James Davis and Tyke Byrne. Now, if you look at the makeup of the current Welsh side, with no James Davis available, Ellis Jenkins long-term injury, Josh Navidi, another Jackal, injured,
Thomas Young
not involved, Josh McLeod not involved. If you're looking at those players who are probably the best fetchers, the people over the ball, I mean, the back row we started with today and Wainwright, they've both got, each individually, they've got great attributes. But I just think the way that Wales want to play We need quick ball. You saw it actually, ironically, in the interception try. I think France were a bit fatigued at that point. Didn't quite get the numbers to contest the breakdown that they had in the first half. Wales had quick ball. All of a sudden, they had 2 in over.
Parks made a bust.
Well, I think it was actually when Tompkins gave the pass, there were 2 men free outside him.
Yeah, quick. It came from Parks getting over the game line.
From quick ball. Yeah. So that is a thing I think they've got to look at. The makeup of their pack in terms of ball retention and ball nicking.
Yeah. I suppose I've seen a few people sort of saying, Gatland won a Grand Slam in his first Six Nations, Eddie Jones won a Grand Slam in his first Six Nations, and they're making out that this whole transition year is a fallacy. But I think what you've got to remember there is Gatland took over a heavily underperforming team full of good players from Gareth Jenkins. Eddie Jones took over a heavily underperforming team full of good players from Stuart Lancaster. Pivac's taken over a vastly experienced, settled squad that's just made it to a semi-final, and he's trying to change things. That's surely harder than, adding a morale boost like Gatland and Eddie Jones did.
I think it's important to remember that those 2 Grand Slams you've mentioned are freak incidents. They're not common occurrences,
No.
and we've been blessed in Wales really over the last 12 years to have an immense amount of success under Warren Gatland, and it spoiled us a little bit. And fans and some journalists as well, including myself, you've got to remind yourself that those sorts of occurrences are not regular.
Because of that fast start, you forget then that 2010 Gatland had a dreadful year that drew with Fiji, and that's when he had to sort of rebuild the team, which that was when the sort of ripping up the foundations came, wasn't it?
Where people are going to point fingers is defensively. It's going to happen, and it was almost the perfect storm, wasn't it? I mean, Sean Edwards coming back into town today, demonstrating what he's brought to the French party with the way they put their bodies on the line in that extra time period in the first half. The big hit from Vakatawa that ultimately led to the try for Vermes. The sort of commitment, the physicality. It was, as I say, it was Edwards all over. And then you look at Wales. I think we now conceded 7 tries in their last 2 Test matches, and could easily have been 8 today, but for just a ball that just went slightly forward ahead of another wonderful cross kick from Ntamak. So that's going to be a concern, because Wales are up against 14 men for 20 minutes of that game, and they conceded 27 points. Now, you're not going to win many Test matches with those kind of statistics.
Yeah, the only thing I would say on that is one of the tries came from a knockdown from a kick, and the other one was an intercept. So, whilst France didn't perhaps score from too many of Wales's defensive frailties, I take Simon's point to a certain degree that Wales's defence wasn't particularly dominant, as it has been in the past.
No. Yeah, no, it wasn't. I think where there was dominance was with the physicality of the French at the breakdown. That is something that Wales will have to address, because they were counter-rucked off the ball on a couple of occasions. It was ferocious, their counter-rucking was, and they threw bodies at it. And it's like with all of these things, on the field, you've got to try and work a way around these things, haven't you? But of course, it doesn't get any easier now, because they're off to Twickenham.
Indeed. One final question then. On the 2 weeks before Twickenham, Gethin wants to know, is it now time for Wales to have a look at some uncapped players? Will Griff-John, obviously Lewis Rees-Zammit.
Whoa, let me jump in here. Wales are going to Twickenham. It's Wales against England. I would be very concerned, not very concerned, but I would advise caution when it comes to somebody like Louis Rees-Zammit. Throwing him in at Twickenham, that is the deepest of deep ends as a Welsh rugby player. I know the championship's gone, but what you don't want to do is throw these boys in and things go wrong.
Yeah.
You don't want to throw them to the wolves. I would be far more comfortable, personally, with Louis Rees-Zammit making his debut against Scotland in the final weekend. Both teams effectively playing for nothing at that point, probably. That's basically an exhibition match, or it's a test match, but there's not going to be a lot riding on it. If he makes mistakes in that game, it's not going to be a massive concern. But if he makes mistakes at Twickenham and Wales get hammered, then that's a problem for his confidence.
The only thing you've got to say is that hands may be forced here. George North has gone off with the HAA. Didn't look, he looked quite prone when he went down. Given his previous history, might they decide that he needs a couple of weeks away from it? I watched Josh Adams, his ankle go over. That was pretty gory. It almost went at 90 degrees. He soldiered on, brave lad. But you've got to wonder if there might be some ligamental tendon damage there in his ankle. So there's question marks there. Question mark over Liam Williams. I know he did a bit of a run through before the game yet, but is he going to be ready for Twickenham? So all of a sudden, you're starting to be a bit short on numbers in the back three. You've basically got McNichol, I guess, who's going to be there, and Halfpenny. And then after that,
Amos.
it could be just Amos or Lewis Rees-Zammit. So it could happen that he goes in there, Will Griff-John, I don't think he will see him. I think they seem to have decided that he's a work in progress, and perhaps in terms of getting used to the fitness levels at the Wales and the conditioning levels, and he's not there the whole time either. But it'd be fascinating to see. I mean, young kids can get thrown in and prosper. I'd hate for him to go to Twickenham and have a bad day.
Yeah.
That'd be the one thing, but
Yeah.
I don't know, we'll see. I think fitness issues will be key in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, just quickly on that, with Will Griff-John, Wales don't feel like they've got a problem at the scrum at the moment. Whether we do is pretty much irrelevant, or the fact, to a degree, they don't think it's their fault. So I don't think we're going to see that change for Twickenham.
And generally, the scrum has been good. It's not been bad. It's just that they've got they have got to find a way of dealing. If people are bending the rules, then you've got to bend them back somehow.
Exactly. Well, there we go. I think that just about does it for today. So Wales' Six Nations title hopes are over, but it's going to be a long 2 weeks now waiting for Twickenham and that trip. We'll be back again on Monday to kick it all off again.